specific date that Haggai brought the message. The four messages collectively were delivered in a 4-month time span, so really kind of a short period of time. He preached these four messages. Again, just kind of by way of review, we mentioned last week that Haggai is the first of the post-exilic prophets. And post-exilic just means after the captivity, after the exile. And so this is after the Babylonian captivity, really at the very end of the Old Testament where they're found. So not all the books are in that chronological order, but Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi, the last 3 books of the Old Testament, and on a timeline, they were also the last 3 books of the Old Testament. It helps us study them alongside the last 2 books of history. Now, the last 2 books of history are Ezra and Nehemiah. So you have Ezra and Nehemiah. They're much closer to the front of your Bible, but they were contemporaries with Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. So these 5 books are kind of right together chronologically. And so today we're going to look at the second sermon that Haggai preached. And I'll give you one last thing by way of review that we mentioned last week. We mentioned that Haggai, all the Bible names had meaning, and that name Haggai means festive, or literally a celebration. And so Haggai was an encouraging prophet. He delivers a message of encouragement. And many times we find that we need encouraged. We need somebody that will come alongside us and just kind of encourage us and say, keep going, and don't quit, and just be faithful. And that was what Haggai was doing here. He was encouraging his people. Now, the first message was a little more blunt. It was a little more straight to the point. It was, let's get back to work. Let's get back to work. It was we've been here way too long, and we've built our own houses, but the Lord's house is just the foundation. We've never done anything else with it, so it's time to get back to work. The second book here is the call to continue. They've been working. If you look at the dates, it's about 3 weeks, not even quite a month, between Haggai 1:1 and Haggai 2:1. And so the second year of Darius the king, and the 6th month, and the first day of the month. So the first day of the 6th month. Now we look at number 2 in the 7th month, and the 1 and 20th day of the month. And so we've had about a month and a half here. So I said 3 weeks. I meant 6 or 7 weeks here. So he's not even quite 2 months. Just shy of it, maybe about 7 weeks, and so there's not a lot of work been done, but already the people are getting a little bit discouraged, and so Haggai's coming to them in chapter number 2, and he's saying, let's continue. We got the work going again. We started doing what we were here to do. We're building the temple again, but let's continue. Let's keep going. And so he has a message of encouragement. The message and a phrase, and if sometimes you say something like this and you think people might just get up and leave, well, I got the whole message. He gave it to me in a phrase. The message was keep moving forward. So if you really need to go, that's the message. Keep moving forward. You can go ahead and leave, and you say, I got what I needed today. Keep moving forward. But if you want to stay for the whole thing, I'll be about 30 or 35 minutes. So keep moving forward here. Keep moving forward. Haggai, he gives this message on the 21st day of the 7th month. And this is a specific date, and it was a particular date, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about it. But that was the last and the great day of the Feast of Tabernacles. So it lasted 7 days, and that would have put it on the final day of the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, if you want to go back, I have it in my notes here, so I'm just going to read it. But if you want to look at it, it's Leviticus chapter 23 and verses 33 to 36. Moses is giving them the details, the instructions about the Feast of Tabernacles. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, The 15th day of this 7th month shall be the Feast of Tabernacles for 7 days unto the Lord. On the first day shall be an holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein. 7 days ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. On the 8th day shall be an holy convocation unto you, and ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. It is a solemn assembly, and ye shall do no servile work therein. And so there's very specific instructions from Moses, from God to Moses, to give to the children of Israel about these. This is what you're to do to observe the Feast of Tabernacles. And that final day, that last day, the great day, it would be the last day of the Feast of Tabernacles. This is the day that Haggai is going to preach this message to the children of Israel. Now, during that feast, it was customary to celebrate the ingathering of the harvest. The seventh month would have fallen during our September-October. I say September-October because it could have been either, because they're on a different calendar than we're on. And so they have a lunar calendar. Their months, their dates sometimes fall differently than ours, but it's in our fall time. September, October, just like here when we would bring in crops and you'd see farmers harvesting, whether it's soybeans or corn or whatever it is here locally. In Bible times, it was also their harvest time. And so this Feast of Tabernacles was a time to celebrate the harvest that they had brought in. But what do we know from chapter 1? A little bit more review from last week, but God had brought a drought on the people, and God had brought a famine on the people. He was doing those things to get their attention. And so this harvest was not a real good one. Crops were still not real good this year. There was not a lot of food. There was not a lot of plenty. There was really not a lot to celebrate here during this time. And although the work was getting back going again, they had not accomplished a lot of work in the short time period that it went from chapter 1 to chapter 2. But they had accomplished enough to look back, and some of the people were old enough to remember the original temple that had been destroyed, and now they're looking at the new temple that they're building, and they're saying, this is not going to be like the first one. I mean, they just looked at the footprint. You know, sometimes you see a house, they'll pour a slab. If it's built on a slab, you'll see them pour the slab first. And when they pour that, many times you look at a house and you say, well, that doesn't look very big. And until they start to frame up the walls and they start to put some drywall on, and then you see, oh, that could be a room, and that's a kitchen, and that's a living room, and there's a restroom. I can see some of the plumbing that's up through the foundation or up through the slab, and you see different things. But they're walking around and they're working on this project, and they're saying, this is not what we remember. It's not as big as we remember it being. Probably they're looking at if you remember the original temple, Solomon's temple, David didn't get to build the temple. He wanted to build God a house, but because of his reign and because he had been a man of war, God said, you can't build the temple, but your son's going to build the temple. And so David, because he couldn't build the temple, he started accumulating resources for when they could build the temple. He's getting timber, and he's getting gold, and he's getting silver. I read just recently, one gentleman said that in modern times, it would have been something like $50 billion in gold in today's standards. Now, I don't know exactly how you can verify that and know that, but just to say that David accumulated great wealth and great resources for that when his son Solomon would begin to build, everything was there. I mean, it's just kind of like a piece that you had to put together all the pieces, and the temple would be built, and the temple was magnificent, Solomon's temple. And it was very ornate, and some that had lived a long time, they're looking, and they're remembering, and they're putting things together, and they're beginning to grumble, and they're beginning to complain, this is not what we remember. This is not as good as what we remember the first one being like. And so Haggai is coming to them. They're grumbling and they're complaining about their present circumstances, the lack of food, the lack of ingathering, the lack of harvest. And then they're grumbling and they're complaining about even the work that they're accomplishing. And so God directed Haggai to speak this message, particularly, he says, to two people, to Zerubbabel and to Joshua, the son of Josedek. This was the governmental leader, and this was the religious leader at that time. And so it tells us the date. It tells us that the word of the Lord came by the prophet Haggai. And then it tells us in verse 2, speak now to Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah. So he's the governmental leader. And to Joshua, the son of Josedek, the high priest. He's the religious leader. And then to the residue of the people saying. So here was the message that he had. And Haggai, he deals honestly with the situation. Sometimes we talk about the elephant in the room, the thing that's there that nobody wants to talk about. Well, Haggai, he sees it. Haggai, he hears it. And so Haggai is going to deal with the questions that they're grumbling about, that they're complaining about. And when we get to verse number 3, he asks a bunch of questions. Who is left among you that saw this house in her first glory? So he had heard the grumbling, he had heard the complaining, and so he just addresses it. How many of you remember what you've lived long enough. These would have been the older people that they could remember before it was destroyed. This is what it looked like. And then he asked another question, and how do you see it now? Is it not in your eyes in comparison of it as nothing? And so he's addressing these questions, these complaints that they have. And remember, one last thing kind of by way of introduction here. Compared to the number that were carried away captive, really a small number had returned. And so this is not a lot of people that's supplying the resources. This is not a lot of people that's doing the work. By comparison of those that have been carried away captive to Babylon, the number of them that had returned. They had nowhere near the resources of Solomon. Haggai he's just dealing with what's in front of him. We don't have what Solomon had. We don't have all the resources. David has not accumulated all those things for us. This temple is not near as large. It's not going to be near as ornate. Yet Haggai was here to encourage them to keep going. And he gives promises to strengthen them. You know, sometimes we fall into this trap of comparison. Pastors can fall into this trap of comparison. Sundays can be a bad day sometimes. A pastor preaches to his church, and he goes home, and just kind of like anybody else, you pull out your phone, and you get on Facebook. That's what people do, and you start scrolling through there, and here's this church, and they're posting their big day. And they're posting about how many people got baptized. And they're posting about how many people got saved. And you're thinking, oh, we're not doing anything. We're not doing anything. God's blessing their church. God's working at their church. And they had visitors at their church. They have people getting saved at their church. And I'm using myself as an example, but all of us can be like that we can look at somebody else and what they've done, and then we look at what we're doing, and we think, am I doing anything? Am I just spinning my wheels? Am I making any difference here? Is God using me in any way? I mean, God seems to be blessing them, but look at my life. And we need to be encouraged, and we need to be told to continue and to keep going and to move forward. And Haggai is reminding them that just because it's not as big or just because it's not as ornate doesn't mean that God's not in it. God wanted His temple to be rebuilt. God wanted them to rebuild. And if God had wanted them to build bigger, He would have made it possible that they could have built bigger. And if God wanted to be more ornate, He could have made it possible. But God was having them build it this way, and with the limited resources that they had. And so Haggai gives promises to strengthen them. Number one, if you look back again at verses 4 and 5, we see the presence that strengthens us. What is the presence that strengthens us? It's God's presence. Haggai was reminding them of the presence of God. He says this command 3 times. Yet now be strong, O Zerubbabel, saith the Lord. Be strong, O Joshua, the son of Josedek, the high priest. Be strong, all ye people of the land, saith the Lord, and work, for I am with you. Who was this message from? This message was from God. God was telling them to be strong, and God says you can be strong. Why? Because I am with you. I am with you, saith the Lord of hosts. According to the word that I covenanted with you when you came out of Egypt, so my spirit remaineth among you. Fear ye not. So the presence that strengthens us is God's presence. And then we see an encouraging imperative. Be strong. Be strong. Be strong. That was not meant as a harsh remark. That was not meant as a critical remark. That was an encouraging remark. You can be strong. Why? Because God's with you, Zerubbabel. You can be strong, Joshua. Why? Because God's with you. You can be strong, all ye people. Why? Because God's with us. He's not left us. He's not forgotten about us. As His Spirit was back then, His Spirit still remaineth among you. Fear ye not. And so He gets that command, that imperative to be strong. He gives it to Zerubbabel. He gives it to Joshua. He gives it to all the people. You know, the truth is, all of us, if we're honest, have times when we've thought about quitting. Now, I hope that's not today, but it could be. It could be. I've been in a church service before where I went to the church service knowing that I didn't know if I could keep going. I thought this might be the day that I quit. I just don't know if I can keep it up. I don't know if I can keep doing this. I don't know if we can just keep moving forward. We've all been there. Times where we get discouraged, times where we get frustrated, times where we begin to worry, is it worth it? Are we making any difference? Are we doing anything? Are we accomplishing anything? And God wants to encourage us during that time. No doubt they were at a point of discouragement and frustration. I mean, you ever tried to do something that you're trying to do something good, and you look around and things aren't good? I mean, this is harvest time. This is a time of celebration. This is a time where we're rejoicing. We're bringing everything in, but they're looking around and we're not bringing hardly anything in. There's not much to celebrate around here. I mean, things are honestly, they're pretty bad. They're not so good. And we're working on this temple, but look at it. I mean, the thing, it doesn't look like much. It's not near as big. It's not near as nice. It's not really what we had envisioned in our minds. And they had gotten discouraged and they'd gotten frustrated. The Apostle Paul, he dealt with this in the New Testament, Galatians 6:9. Let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. Well, what a promise. God's telling us through the Apostle Paul that to not grow weary in well-doing. When you're doing right, don't let your mind get tired. Don't let your body get tired and say, I want to quit, I want to give up. Just determined to keep going, determined to be faithful, determined to not quit. Why? For in due season we shall reap if we faint not. I remember as a young pastor, I talked to Dr. Bernard often, but there were times that I felt like, well, Dr. Bernard, we're just so close. We've worked together so many years. I worked for him, and so I had some other older pastors like himself that I really looked up to. A lot of them were friends of his, people that had been in my life because of his ministry. And I looked up to those men, and I remember I would call those men, and I don't remember what the year was, but we used to have some pine trees to the south. We had the old bus garage, and then there were some old white pine trees. And I remember walking outside, because I didn't want anybody to hear me, because I was discouraged, because I was thinking about quitting. I was thinking, I'm not sure I can do this. I'm not sure I'm the guy for the job. I'm not sure I'm cut out for this. So I went outside because I didn't want anybody to hear me in my office. And I'd walked all the way out underneath those pine trees, and I was talking to a pastor, and I'm just walking back and forth during those pine trees, and I'm thinking, I just don't know. I don't know if I'm the guy that's supposed to be the pastor here. I don't know if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know if we're making any difference. I think every pastor probably at some point says something like that. I just don't know if we're impacting people here anymore. I don't know if we're having any influence here anymore. And I really hadn't been pastor here very long. It was just things that got just like that in the ministry, and there were some frustrations. And I remember that pastor, he essentially was telling me, don't quit. Don't quit. Hang in there. Just keep doing what you're supposed to do. And then he said something very similar to what the Apostle Paul said. In due season we shall reap if we faint not. I remember he said, Brandon, he said, I found that times like this in my ministry, that when things were bad and they weren't going so good, that if I stayed in there during those times, and I kept being faithful during those times, he goes, eventually it came to an end. And when that season came to an end, he said, oftentimes I found that the next season was a season of plenty, a season of rejoicing, a season of harvest. And that didn't really comfort me a whole lot at that time, because I wanted that, but I was still here. I was still here where I was struggling and things were not going good, and we still had the problems. And when I said thank you, sir, and I hung up the phone, the problems were still there. The discouragement was still there. The frustrations were still there. But I thought, I think that was good advice. I know that man loves me. I know he cares for me. And so I think that's good advice. I trust him as a man of God, that he would give advice that God would have him to give. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to keep going. And I'm still frustrated, I'm still serving. I'm still discouraged, and I'm still serving. I still had some thoughts of maybe I'm not the person, maybe this isn't the place, but I just kept going. And then all of a sudden, you know what happened? That season finally came to an end. And just like he had said, you know what was on the other side? There was a harvest. There was rejoicing. There was plenty. Now, it took a while to get through here, but eventually I got to that place. And Paul tells us, let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. And if you're at a place this morning where you're saying, I don't know if I can keep going. I don't know if I can do this. I'm just telling you this morning, don't quit. Don't give up. Keep going. It was a common theme in Paul's writings. 1 Corinthians 15:58, he told the Corinthians, therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, for as much as you know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. Keep going. Keep going. Keep moving forward. It's not in vain in the Lord. If you're serving the Lord, it's not in vain. You ever served the Lord and you felt like it was in vain? I know you have. If you served the Lord, you felt like that. You taught a class and you thought, did that do anything? You drove a bus. Did that do anything? I remember working bus ministry, Vale and I, when we first got married, and we'd go on Saturday. We'd visit our kids. We'd knock on the doors, just reminding you, the bus will be here tomorrow morning. Oh, yeah, we're coming. We'd do that house after house, trailer after trailer, and then the next morning we'd go. Back then, we don't do it anymore, and I'm glad we don't do it anymore because people got angry at us. But used to, we'd pull up to the house, beep, beep, and then we got a bunch of phone calls. They are honking their horn at 8 o'clock in the morning. That bus keeps driving through honking their horn at every trailer. And so we quit honking the horn. We started going up and knocking on the doors again. But the people, sometimes before we even got to the door, they'd open the door and they'd go, tell us to go on. And I'm thinking, why did we run the bus? Man, we used all that gas money. Gas was a lot cheaper then, but we used all that gas and we all got up early and we're looking around and there's like 5 people on the bus. And there were like 30 of them that told us they were coming. You start to think, is this in vain? Why? That's a lot of effort, and it's a lot of time, and it's a lot of money, and is there any good coming out of this? Sometimes it's just as simple as you finally work up the courage. I'm going to invite my coworker. I'm going to ask her to come to church with me, and so you invite your coworker, hey, would you want to come to church? And they say they're going to come, and then they don't come. And you think, was it in vain? I tried to invite him to church. I tried to tell him about this big Sunday. That was the Sunday. I remember the message. Man, that message was on salvation. It was on Jesus dying for us. They could have gotten saved. Was it in vain that I invited them to church? And we get wondering if what we're doing is making any difference. Ephesians 6, verses 13 and 14, Paul says, wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand in the evil day. And having done all to stand, stand therefore. Sometimes you think, I don't know how much longer I can take this stand. But God's saying, keep standing. Keep standing. You're trying to hold some kind of standard in your home, or some kind of standard at your workplace, or some kind of standard in your marriage, and you say, I just don't know if it's even worth it. I feel like I'm the only one standing anymore. And you know what the Apostle Paul says? Stand therefore. Stand. Keep standing. Just as Haggai encouraged the children of Israel, let me encourage you to not quit, but keep moving forward. Do you need that encouragement to continue soul winning? We in the Sunday school class this morning that I went to, in Brother Jeremiah's class, he asked about passing out gospel tracts, and some of them shared in the class about inviting somebody to church, and it encouraged me. It encouraged me. Why? Because when you hear other people and talk about inviting people, you say, I need to invite people. And you hear about somebody that came, you say, I need to come. Somebody that was saved, you say, I need to talk to people that are saved. And so encouragement. Sometimes maybe you just need encouraged to keep on keeping on. Just saying, I want to keep inviting people to church. I want to keep soul winning. I want to keep inviting people to keep serving. Say, I've done Sunday school forever. I've sung in the choir forever. You just need encouragement to keep doing it. Keep on. All the time we're looking for more people to sing in the choir, more people to work in the ministry or in the nursery, more people in the bus ministry, more people in the Sunday school, more people at the coffee area, more people as door greeters. That you'd say, I want to continue serving. And so he gives an encouraging imperative. Number 2, he gives an encouraging reminder. How could they be strong? Because the Lord was with them. We don't continue in our own strength. God is the one who enables us to keep going. Isaiah 40 and verse 31, but they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. They that wait on the Lord, He shall renew their strength. God will help you and He'll enable you to do what He's asked you to do. Think about that. If God's asked you to talk to people about Him, He'll enable you to do that. If you're going to invite somebody to church, and say, hey, I just want to give you this paper from my church. It tells you about heaven, and I wanted to invite you to church. God will enable you to do that. Right? You get a stack of those thank you tracts or a stack of those invitations. That's something all of us can do. We're walking out of the grocery store. We can hand one to somebody that we see coming into the grocery store. Hey, just real quick, I want to invite you to my church. That paper tells you about God and tells you about heaven. I mean, we look, there are opportunities everywhere. And sometimes we just need to get our strength from the Lord. God will help you and He'll enable you to do what He's asked you to do. Hebrews 12:1, wherefore seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us. He will help us to run the race that He's called us to run. Now, what is the work that God's calling you to do? Invite people to church, sing in the choir, help in the bus ministry, teach a kids class, volunteer in the nursery, be a door greeter, say, I'll serve some coffee. I'll be kind of one of the first faces that people see, hey, welcome to our church. We're so glad that you're here today. God will help you to do the work that He's calling you to do. It's time to get to work. That was Haggai's first message. And then his second message goes right along with it. And God's Spirit will help you to do the work. It's time to do the work. And then God's Spirit is going to help us to do the work. And so number one, he tells us about the presence that strengthens us. Number two, the prophecy that secures us. Look at verse 6 and 7. For thus saith the Lord of hosts, yet once it is a little while, and I will shake the heavens and the earth and the sea and the dry land, and I will shake all nations, and the desire of all nations shall come, and I will fill this house with glory, saith the Lord of hosts. Now, it may not right here at the beginning of me reading that, may not seem like a prophecy, but that is the encouragement of fulfilled prophecy. God was going to keep His word. God had said He would send a Messiah, and God always keeps His word. You know, that alone really is another one of those kind of keys to the whole message this morning, that if you'll just get a hold of that truth, that God always is going to keep His word, and God always does keep His word. God, He's going to keep His word. What He said He will do, He is going to do. Why? Because God always keeps His word. He always keeps His word. Joshua 21, verse 45, in the book of Joshua, it said, there failed not aught of any good thing which the Lord had spoken unto the house of Israel. All came to pass. Oh, what a promise. Every single thing that God said came to pass. And the same is true in my life and in your life. God's promises bring great confidence. What He has said, He will do, because God always keeps His words. Then Haggai's message shifts, and it takes on a prophetic tone. He's not just talking about the temple that they're building, but he's talking about the Messiah that is to come. He says in verse 7, I will shake all nations, and the desire of all nations shall come. That phrase, the desire of all nations, that's talking about Jesus Christ. Haggai is declaring that Jesus Christ, the Messiah, is coming. They're building this temple, and one day Jesus Himself is going to be here. And then the encouragement to look ahead. They were looking back instead of looking ahead. And for all of us, there is a tendency to look back at what has been done instead of looking forward to what could be done. And they're looking back, and they're remembering the first temple, and they're remembering what all God had done, and they're remembering how it had been. You know, the past always is better than it really was. I remember Job, when Job, he's our oldest, our firstborn son, when Job was little, he wrestled and he played football. Then he started playing basketball. And when he started playing basketball, I remember I could beat him at horse. I could beat him one-on-one. And then there came a time where I could tell, oh man, he's catching up to me. I'm going to have a hard time beating him one-on-one. I'm going to have a hard time making more shots than he makes. And so then I started telling him stories about, I remember when I played basketball. I was remembering the good old days. I'm telling him about my first step. I was quick. I could beat people on the first step. I had these fakes. But there came a point where all the stories maybe weren't as good as they really had been. And Job's getting better than, well, now it's kind of coming full circle, because now he's done. He's out of high school. He's done with college. He doesn't play college ball anymore. And so now he calls me. March Madness just was on, and he's talking about players, and he's like, yeah, I remember I played this team. He's telling me all these stories. I'm like, Job, you're not that guy anymore. You're not playing any of those guys. You couldn't even beat the water boy anymore. Like, age catches up with you. But we remember the past way better. I remember he was talking to me about March Madness, and we're talking about one of the games. We're going through all the plays in the game. He goes, yeah, I remember my college coach. He goes, we played, remember that one school he named a D1 school. They played a couple D1 colleges and a couple D2 colleges. He goes, yeah, the coach told, John was his coach's name. He said, coach told John, coach of that other team said, yeah, number 11, he's one of the hardest players that we have to game plan for. He goes, he was a D1 coach. I'm thinking, Job, that was like 4 years ago, man. It's over. it's all in the past now. Like, we're just remembering the good old days. And whether it's a sport or whether it's a car or whether it's what we look like or our physique, we're just remembering the good old days. And a lot of times we remember them better than maybe they really were. And so they're remembering the good old days, and they're remembering the past instead of looking ahead. Matthew Henry, the Bible commentator, he said, though our gracious God is pleased if we do as well as we can in His service, yet our proud hearts will scarcely let us be pleased unless we do as well as others, whose abilities are far beyond ours. You know, we get into this problem of comparing. God's called me to do something. God's not called me to compare myself to this pastor or this missionary or that Christian. Just this is what God's given Brandon to do. And God's given you something to do. And you don't have to compare yourself to, well, that person did this and that person did that. No, just do what God's asked you to do. Just be faithful to the task that He's put in front of you and say, this is my task. This is what God's given me to do. This is the class that I have or the bus route that I have. And it doesn't have to be, well, the green bus had this and the red bus had this. No, just say, this is my bus and I want to do the best I can. Or this is my class. And just serve the Lord all of your days. Fulfilled prophecy gives us confidence in what is still to come. Isaiah 46 verses 9 and 10 said, remember the former things of old, for I am God, and there is none else. I am God. There is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times the things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. I believe there are great days ahead for Good Shepherd Baptist Church. I turned 50 this year. I'm not planning on retiring anytime soon. But I know there will come a day where my time will end. Right? Dr. Bernard had the season that he pastored. There's a season that I'm pastoring. And one time that'll come to an end, and there will be somebody else that follows after me. But I believe there are great days ahead for Good Shepherd Baptist Church. I believe God has great things for us now. I believe God has great things for us in the future. That we would serve the Lord. That we would say, okay, God, this is the time that you've given us. I like in, I don't remember what book. I think maybe it's one of the Samuels, 1st or 2nd Samuel. But it said that David served his own generation. This is your time. This is our time. And God has put us here for this time. And we don't have to compare to the past. We don't have to compare to the future. But just say, for this time, this is the time that God's given us. This is the place that God's given us. And then lastly, I see the promise that sustains us. The promise that sustains us in verses 8 and 9. The silver is mine, the gold is mine, saith the Lord of hosts. The glory of this latter house shall be greater than of the former, saith the Lord of hosts. And in this place will I give peace, saith the Lord of hosts. The promise that sustains us is the reminder that God has the ownership of all resources. He has the ownership of all resources. It is the encouragement of the eternal presence of God. You see, the ultimate fulfillment of Haggai's message is in the future. He was telling the people that the future temple will far exceed any of the past temples. Beyond the size and the ornate details of the temple is what it was. What was the temple? Well, the temple was the place where God met with His people. That's what the temple was. The temple was the house of God. That's where God met with His people. In Ezekiel 48 and verse 35, it says it was round about 18,000 measures, and the name of that city from that day shall be the Lord is there. That's the future glory. The future glory is that one day we're going to be with the Lord in His presence for all of eternity. It's another of the compound names of God. It's the name Jehovah Shammah in the Hebrew. The Lord is there. And Haggai was speaking of the future, that one day, the glory of the future temple is that the Lord will be there, and He'll be there for all of eternity, and we'll be in His presence. And then notice the overcoming glory, the encouragement that the best is yet to come. The best is yet to come. God reminds them that He is not limited when it comes to resources. He was not looking for funding. He was not looking for materials. You know what God was looking for? He was looking for willing hands. Those that would serve, those that would build, those that would do something. Our future in heaven is going to be better than we could ever imagine. But the question is, will you serve Him today? Right? Haggai is telling them there's a better day coming. The best is yet to come. The future temple is going to far surpass anything that you've ever seen before. But right now, will you keep working? Will you keep working? Sometimes when we get our eyes on heaven, we say, I can keep serving. All of a sudden, we start thinking about heaven, and we start thinking what it's going to be like, and I'm going to be in God's presence for all of eternity, and all the things that will be no more. And you say, let's just serve the Lord till Jesus comes. I want to keep being faithful. I want to not quit. Here we are thousands of years later, but the challenge of the message is still the same. The work that God has given you is the most important work in the world. We don't need to compare it to anyone or anything else. Nehemiah, remember I said that the books of Ezra and Nehemiah are contemporaries of Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi, the last three books of prophecy. Nehemiah, while he's building, the enemy comes to him, and Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 3, Nehemiah answers back and says, I sent messengers unto them, saying, I am doing a great work, so that I cannot come down. Why should the work cease whilst I leave it and come down to you? Nehemiah didn't even get bothered with the enemy. Even those that were seeking to attack, even those that were seeking to get him to quit, he said, I don't even have time for that. I'm doing a great work. I just need to keep working. I just need to keep moving forward. I just need to keep doing what God has called us to do. And he, in a sense, just kind of ignored the naysayers. And I'm saying that to say there will be times that people will say things, maybe at work, could be even in your family. Maybe some of your friends will say things that would discourage you, that would frustrate you. But just like Nehemiah, you can just kind of say, you know what, I'm not even going to listen to that. I'm just going to kind of let that roll off my back. Because I know what I'm doing. I'm doing what God's called me to do. I'm doing what God wants me to do. And this is more important than the grumbling and the complaining and the arguing that I could do over there. I'm just going to keep serving the Lord. I'm just going to keep moving forward. Haggai's name meant festive, or literally a celebration. He comes to them and encourages them to continue in the work. Haggai, it's almost like he's telling them the goal was not just to start, but to finish the work. We need to have a good start. That's important. Anything you do, you want to get off to a good start. Have the best start that you can. But that's not the goal. The goal isn't just getting off to a good start. The goal is, I want to finish what I started. I want to finish what I started. Sometimes the work seems too small. They looked at the temple and it was just not the same. And sometimes we've got to look ahead in faith. We maybe can't see all that God is going to do. They couldn't see all that God was going to do. But here's what they could trust. This is what God's asked us to do. This is what God's told us to do. This is the work that God has given us to do. Look ahead in faith. Sometimes the work can seem insignificant or unimportant. I've done things before that I just wondered, does that even matter? Does that even make any difference? Does anybody even know that I did that? It just seems insignificant. It just seems like it really wasn't even a big deal, kind of unimportant. When the work seems small, when the resources seem few, your strength seems almost gone, remember the call to continue. To continue. Perhaps you've let some discouragement creep into your spiritual life. I don't know everybody here this morning. I don't know what's going on personally in your life. But it's possible to even be at church and be discouraged. So I came, and on the outside I'm smiling, but boy, I'm discouraged on the inside. I'm down on the inside. I'm frustrated. I'm struggling on the inside. You know what? When discouragement comes, it often leads to discontentment. Discouraged people become discontent people. When they started the temple, everybody's excited. But when they got discouraged, they started looking around saying, it doesn't look very big. It's not near as ornate as it used to be. And they become discontented. Now, we have to fast forward that into the year 2026 and what that looks like in our life. But when we get discouraged, it's not hard to become discontented. And when you become discontented, the next step is you become disillusioned. You have the wrong thoughts. You begin to think things that you shouldn't think and kind of philosophize in ways that you shouldn't be. That's where the people were, and maybe that's where you are this morning. Each of Haggai's sermons dealt with a particular sin that was keeping them from accomplishing God's will and finishing the work. In a very real way, every time that the word is preached or every time the word is taught, God's reminding us of something that's keeping us from doing what we're supposed to be doing. And we just need to be reminded. We just need to be encouraged to keep moving forward. Is something keeping you from doing what God wants you to do? I don't know. I'll say things like this. I have no idea who it might apply to, but it could be that there's something keeping you from singing in the choir. Could be there's something that's keeping you from working in the bus ministry. It could be there's something that's keeping you from volunteering in one of the ministries that we're always mentioning. There could be something that's keeping you from being a soul winner at your workplace or at your school. You know, giving somebody a gospel tract and saying, hey, this tells you how you can know for sure you're going to heaven. I don't know if you know the Lord as your Savior, but this tells you how you can know Him. Is there something keeping you from doing what you ought to be doing? And then we got to be willing to confront our sin and be willing to change. They needed the temple, right? They needed somebody to confront them. If Haggai doesn't come and they keep getting discouraged and they keep getting discontented, what's going to happen? It's not going to take long. The work's going to stop again. It had already stopped once. They laid the foundation and then nothing else was done for years. Now they've restarted the work. Chapter 1, get back to work. They've restarted the work, but they're going to get discouraged. It's not going to take long. The work's going to stop again. They needed Haggai to come to them. They needed to be encouraged. Why? Because they needed the temple. Why? Because the temple was the presence of God. That's where God met with them. Hey, in our own personal lives, we need a reminder that a life without God is an empty life. You try to live this life without God, you're going to find out it's going to be struggle. It's going to be hard. It's going to be problems. It's going to be empty. There's a hole that's not been filled. Why? Because we need God. You need God in your marriage. You need God when you're raising your children. You need God in your golden years. You need God in every part of your life, and a life without God is an empty life. Haggai said you need that temple because you need God. Don't quit. Do not compare. Do not look back. Keep moving forward. Let's go ahead and stand.